Lewis Kemper here in my Adventure Van Wanderer. Thanks for joining me on this last installment of my trip from Alaska to the Arctic Ocean and back. It's been a really wonderful trip. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Well, except for the night that the mosquitoes got all in the van. But other than that, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I want to thank you all for joining me on these adventures. In this last video, I'm going to be covering going from Haines, Alaska to home. Once I left Haines, I went to Whitehorse and visited with some cousins there and had a really wonderful time getting to know them and spending some time with them and seeing their wonderful home in Whitehorse. From Whitehorse, I went down to Carcross and to the Carcross Desert, which they bill as the smallest desert in the world. But actually it's not a true desert, but it is a large expanse of sand dune in British Columbia. That was the first time that I flew my drone on this trip, shooting video and still images. I used the drone a couple more times after that, and now I'm sorry that I didn't start using the drone earlier. From Carcross, I went down the Cassiar Highway, and the most exciting part of that trip was the visit over to Hyder, Alaska. Brenda, Jed, and I had a 3-day pass to photograph the bears in Hyder. And that was very exciting. Very different way to experience the bears than what I had been used to. Once we left Hyder, things got a little wonky due to the wildfires. As you're all probably aware, there were bad wildfires all over Canada and especially in British Columbia this year. But once we left Hyder, we were hindered by wildfire smoke. And as we drove south, roads got cut off, fires were changing paths, and we had to alter our way home, and ended up making kind of a hasty retreat, leaving British Columbia and heading back to the United States. I'm going to do one more kind of follow-up video from this trip, and it's just going over all the things in the van that I really liked, things that maybe I would think about doing a little bit differently, but there really aren't too many of those, and just what I got the most use out of, things that may help you if you're thinking about van life in the future. So enjoy this video where I take you on the last portion of my trip from Haines to home. This portion of the trip took me from Haines, driving back up the Haines Highway, up to Haines Junction, and then over to Whitehorse. I spent a couple of nights in Whitehorse visiting with cousins. This is the road into my cousins, just south of Whitehorse.
This is incredible!
Hi.
Hi, cuz!
And then on the third day, my cousins and I drove down in our separate vehicles down to Carcross, to what's known as the Carcross Desert. It's not really a true desert, but it's a large expanse of sand dunes in Carcross in the Yukon Territory. Here we met up with Brenda and Jed, and while we were in Carcross, I actually flew my drone for the first time on the trip, besides practicing in Homer when I was there. So I flew the drone for the first time and did some video of the dunes. Then Brenda and Jed and I caravanned over towards the Teslin Lake. And while we were there, we spent the night in a large turnout area, and it was kind of funny when we pulled into the turnout area. After we parked, I got up, went to the back of the van. I had closed my curtains, and I heard this noise coming from the front of the van. I didn't know what it was. So I walked back up, opened my curtains, and there was a red fox peering in through my windshield. It had jumped up on the hood of the car. I ran back in the van to grab my phone because I really wanted to get a picture of the red fox on my Fox van, but I wasn't fast enough, and the fox jumped off. The next day we drove from Teslin Lake. We went by the Swift River. This was the place where we spent that horrible night on the river when all the mosquitoes got into the van. We drove by that spot, went back to Watson Lake where we had been on our way up, did some food shopping at Watson Lake and got all our supplies, got gas and everything, and then we were making our way down the Cassiar Highway. The Cassiar Highway is a 450-mile stretch of road
going basically from Watson Lake, really starts a little out of Watson Lake and goes all the way down to Kitwanga. It's 450 miles of no cell phone service. The only place we got cell phone is when we cut off of the Cassiar Highway and went over to Stewart, Canada in BC and Hyder, Alaska. And we had permits to photograph the bears at the bear viewing station in Hyder, Alaska. I pointed that out because once we started down that road, I got separated from Brenda and Jed. And I thought we were meeting up at Good Hope Lake, but they never found the spot where I was, and we missed each other. And after spending some time at Good Hope Lake, I flew the drone again. And I realized that we weren't connecting. I was able to use my Garmin InReach, which works off the satellite, and send them an email telling them I would meet them in Hyder in a couple of days right before our permit started. So from there, I drove down the Cassiar Highway So as I mentioned, continued down Cassiar Highway once I realized I wasn't going to find them again. I spent the night at Dease Lake. And the next day went on. I photographed and pulled the drone out again at Upper Nat Lake. I went down to the junction and spent the night just outside of Stewart. And then I met up with Brenda and Jed the next day in Hyder, and we had 3-day permit to photograph the bears in Hyder. And we also, while we were in Hyder, drove up kind of narrow, sort of windy, little treacherous, scary in parts dirt road to get a good view of the Salmon Glacier. You can see how the fireweed's all finished over here, especially on the right. It means that the summer is coming to an end. There's a teeny bit of fall color starting, and I feel like I'm leaving right when it's starting to get good. My timing is off this year, but it just means I have to come back once again on a different schedule when I can get home later and witness the amazing fall color up here in the Yukon and British Columbia and Alaska. Hi, some of you may know that I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. If you're from Maryland, probably one of your favorite foods is Maryland crab cakes. So while I was in Anchorage, I bought some blue crab at Costco, and I've gone on and some Old Bay seasoning, and I went onto the Old Bay website and I got the recipe, and I'm making myself some good old-fashioned Maryland crab cakes with lots and lots of crab meat. Really looking forward to this treat, something special. And I probably will have enough crab cakes to last 2 or 3 days. So, great deal. I'll let you know how they turn out. They're done. And just have to get them out of the oven without getting burnt. There we go. There's my delicious crab cakes. And the secret to making good Maryland crab cakes is a pretty simple recipe. A couple pieces of bread, and the main ingredient is Old Bay seasoning. You can't have Maryland crab cakes without Old Bay seasoning, and you can't have Maryland crab cakes without blue crab. Costco sells a nice thing of blue crab. Already threw the container in the trash, so you have to go find your own. But it's pretty easy. It's the blue crab, the bread, Old Bay seasoning, some mayonnaise, some mustard, and that's about it. And you'll get delicious crab cakes every time. So I can't wait to enjoy mine. I'm cooking up some vegetables to go along with them, and it's going to be a great dinner. From here we left Stewart, backtracked to the junction, drove south a little bit. We photographed the salmon at the fish ladder, and then continued out to the Canadian Highway again, part of the Alcan. and we drove over to Prince George.
So my trip is winding down, turned south, and I'm heading back home. A little sad about that because there's still things I haven't seen and things I want to see, especially that the start of fall colors is happening and I'm not going to be here to see it. But I thought before the trip ended I would try my outdoor table for the first time, and I'm setting up my Coleman 4-in-1, and I'm going to grill salmon, hopefully without the presence of any bears, out here in the wilds of British Columbia. It's starting to get smoky on the way home today, and I think I'm going to be in for smoke probably for the next 3 or 4 days easily as I make my way down south. So hopefully the roads will all be open and I'll be able to get where I'm going. But it's kind of fun to get to use the outdoor table for the first time. It's nice. There's absolutely no bugs, much different than a month ago. And after having a trip that was dictated by bugs for so long, it's nice to be able to be outside, be able to cook outside, and enjoy the beautiful day, except for the smoke. So I'm going to grill up, get my stuff ready, go inside and prep my vegetables, and I'll come back later when the salmon's grilling. So right now I'm grilling my vegetables. Since I am in bear territory, I got a little bit nervous. So got out my bear spray, got out my air horn. Hopefully I won't have to use either one. I actually think I made more vegetables than I have room for. So I may grill the vegetables first, put them on a plate, and then do the salmon, and then warm the vegetables back up. So I don't think I have room for everything I made. Got 2 big pieces of salmon. This is sockeye salmon that we bought right off the boat in Homer, and then filleted at my friend Ken and Diane's house. So really looking forward to eating this here and having a great dinner. Time to put the salmon on. Dispose of this properly. Well, it's almost done. I just put the vegetables back on to warm them up, and I could probably actually turn off the heat at this point to let everything get warm, and then I'm going to hopefully get it all on the plate without losing too much and have a wonderful, delicious dinner. I'll share what it looks like. to come over and remove the GoPro. But that's my dinner for tonight. Sockeye salmon from Homer and fresh vegetables. And hopefully no bears coming down the road. This way or that way. So I think I'm going to be driving through wildfire smoke until I get home. So I'm above Prince George in British Columbia. Still 62 kilometers away, it says. And smoke everywhere. It's just been smoky all day. Smoky yesterday. And I don't think there's any way around it for the next 3 or 4 days. All up and down the west coast of the U.S. and all the way into the U.S. through British Columbia. So it's going to be one smoke-filled adventure. Kind of a depressing ending for a wonderful trip. I don't know if it shows up in the video, but you can see all the smoke up ahead. And it's just getting thicker. We're going to have to actually alter our route home due to wildfires. And it looks like we're going to have to go through some smoky areas for a little while. So I'm wearing a N95 mask as I drive. And not looking forward to this next part of the ride. A crummy way to end the trip. Heading home. Once we left Stewart and got back out towards the junction, everything became smoky. We were, the wildfires were burning. Smoke was coming into the area. It was hazy. You could smell it in the air. We couldn't turn north and go out because a fire had broken out while we were in Hyder and the road was closed going north. So we continued on to Prince George. From Prince George, we drove through the smoke and stopped at Williams Lake because for some reason in this little zone right here, there was a whole lot less smoke than everywhere else. Then we left Williams Lake and drove down 97. And when we got to Cache Creek, we had to make a little bit of a detour. We wanted to just go down one to Hope, but this section of road was closed to wildfires. So we had to veer off a little bit. So here's where we get rerouted on our trip, having to take an alternate route because the road ahead is closed due to wildfires.
In 800 meters, turn left onto Highland Valley Road, British Columbia 97C.
And it looks like from the smoke map that we're going to be going through a pretty intense area of smoke before we get to the town of Hope.
Turn left onto Highland Valley Road, British Columbia 97C. Continue for 64 kilometers.
We took a little road down here to Merritt. Then we came down, went to Abbotsford, and this is where we crossed into the U.S. And we spent the night on a Forest Service road going up to Mount Baker in a campsite that Brenda and Jed had used when they were traveling north to start the trip. And then the next day, this is where we split off. And I drove down, actually taking sort of back roads, but ended up down in North Bend, Washington to visit my friend John, pick up the lenses that I had left there. And then when I left John's North Bend, I drove down 5 through Portland to Eugene and here and up to La Pine to my friend Charlie's where I spent the night. And then the final leg of my trip took me from La Pine down through Klamath Falls over to Weed and down I-5 and back home to Sacramento. And that concludes my journey to Alaska.
Well, my trip is over. I'm back home. I've been back for a couple days actually. I'm just getting around to doing a pretty thorough cleaning of the van. And then once I get the van cleaned out, I'm going to start working on this video that you're watching now. And it'll take me probably 2 or 3 days to put it all together, maybe a little bit longer. It's been a while since I posted. And I'll do a wrap up on the trip. And then after I do the wrap up of the trip, I'm going to do one more video just talking about the van, the features I like the best, what it was like to kind of live in it for 3 months, and what my plans are for my next trips. So here I am back in Sacramento, broom in hand. I've been on my knees cleaning out. Look how clean it is. Everything's out from underneath. I took off layers and layers of dust and dirt and cleaning out my bins. And now I've got to clean the front part and get it all nice and tidy, ready for the next trip. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.